So we missed the Dortmund game. We had thought that we would be there to cover the game live, but we couldn't be because we were, yeah, I got caught up. Dom was available. And then last minute we decided that, okay, since one of us couldn't make it, we wouldn't. And that was missed because it was such a great game and we won in such a dramatic fashion. So we thought that why not do justice? And even though it's a few days later, talk about it
Mhm.
today, at least share our thoughts. So with that, welcome, Dom.
Thank you, Dev. Yeah, it's been a hectic week. Sometimes life gets in the way, and for us, December is kind of the busiest month of the year, and there's a lot of stuff happening. Family, work, all of it comes in the way sometimes. Well, comes in the way. Family is always priority, right? So that's what we always say. But yeah, we're here to talk Dortmund. We'll preview the next games. We'll talk about whatever's happened for Barcelona in the last week or so, and just chat to you guys. If you have any questions, you pop them below, and we'll get to them as we always do. But yeah, Dev, as you kind of alluded to, the Dortmund game being the highlight of this week and of this stream as well. So let's start with just some basic thoughts, opinions, feelings. Obviously, it's a win. It was a dramatic win, as you mentioned. It was a win that we weren't sure if it was going to be a win in the end, but it was. It was happily for us, and we only need one more point, if I'm not wrong, to kind of get to the knockout stages. So, share your thoughts, first impressions, Dev.
Well, we were lucky, super lucky. One, that's my first impression. Um, I think I think Barca played a good game in the first half, but I
Mm,
think in the second half it was a bit tilted towards Dortmund. The
mhm.
fact that Ferran got the goals that he got, he does get them at times. He has the ability to come off the bench and score goals. He has that. Some people have that. He has that. We got
Mhm.
lucky. He was in the right place at the right time. Two rebounds, two goals done, and we won the game. But and we'll go through some of the data and some of the formation insights that Dom have done. And yeah, we were lucky. Is all I can say. It
Mm.
wasn't a very um, yeah, definitive performance. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I think you got it right there because it was a game of two halves, and to be honest with you, as happy people will say you're negative again, Don, but as happy as I am with the win, um, this is some sort of a pattern, right? We play one half really well, and then the other half we kind of fall off the cliff, and partly that was due to Dortmund just adapting and being a better competitor at that time, but also Barca does kind of lose intensity. Barca does kind of slow down and revert to some. I don't want to say revert back to mean. They revert to some unoptimized or maybe not maximized version of themselves, right? So that's maybe the case. But yeah, this was very much a case with Barca being completely different in two halves. And the first half was all the good was mostly in the first half, right? And all the bad was mostly in the second half. So it is kind of weird to see, and it's kind of I don't want to say concern, but it's not ideal, right? It's not ideal. But let's start with the positives. The first half was a big positive to me, and the key
Also, Flick
takeaways.
changed.
Yeah,
We
the flick.
often say that Flick does not. Flick is very, stoic. Flick completely changed the game plan in the second half. We gave away possession. We dropped the high
Mhm.
line massively. We went into a deep block, unlike what we do. So yeah, there was a lot of change from Flick, which was to just manage the game, which we generally haven't done in La Liga. So yeah, that's a positive, I would say.
Absolutely a positive. And you know what? First of all, before we go into that, I just want to give a shout out to us because we previewed this game, and the things that we mentioned as key aspects of this Barca success, all of it happened, right? We mentioned the we need a different pressing shape. That was my biggest concern going into this game. If we retain our usual pressing shape, we will get steamrolled, right? And that's what we said. That's number one. We changed that. Flick changed the pressing shape in the first half, and it worked. Right. The second thing was to slow down the game. You saw Pedri, you saw Olmo, players were kind of playing to our strengths. Right. That was key number two. And the third one is just the use of Olmo. If you use Olmo in a proper way, just have him drop deeper a bit, create those overloads, and then combine, you get the best out of this Barca squad. And all those three things happened in the first half, especially, and we saw Barca succeed. But then in the second half we kind of stepped back away from that, and naturally it hurt us. So before we go into all of that stuff, I think we predicted that or previewed that really, really well, and we had Reese on the podcast as well, on the live as well, who confirmed that if you play this way, Dortmund will have the tools to punish you, which is exactly what happened in the second half.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And if you this goes to show that Nuri Sahin did do his homework about Barca, in the way he set up his team, and the way uh, Dortmund tried to gain the offensive in the second half. So they did do their work. To Shopnil's point, I think he said that he would say that we should have scored in the first half. I agree with him. We should have probably scored in the first half. There were a couple
Yeah.
of really good chances we should have, and Dortmund could have been behind. So,
Mhm.
yeah, even Stevens that way. But just on the night, if you take out Ferran's goals, I think Dortmund were more compact, more present, more overall as a team than Barca was for the entirety of the game.
Right. Okay. Let's. I'm actually going to start with that first half. So let's get the good first, because I think that's a good way to do it. So the different pressing shape, that was the positive, because if you remember, the way we press, guys, is always the same, right? Always the same. Lewandowski drops deeper next to Olmo, the wingers closing on the center backs, and that's how we press. But that leaves spaces on the flanks, and that's always an issue for us, especially when you're pressing a team like Dortmund, who have these outlets, who have these players who can use those spaces and hurt you. So what Flick has done is he kind of adjusted it, right? He put Lewandowski on Schlotterbeck, because Schlotterbeck is the main ball carrier. He's the main distributor as well. So you don't want him on the ball. But he left Khan open on the other side. That was kind of the risk. And then he put Lamine on Ben Sabini on the right, which allowed Koundé to stay deeper, right? And Koundé was on Gittins. He wasn't allowing Gittins to be free in open space, right? So that was a big adjustment. And I think it worked. For the most part, it really worked, because Dortmund could not really do what they normally do so well in that first half, especially, and Barca had control of the ball. So I think that was a very, very good thing. And then the second thing was the Pedri and Olmo and Casado, especially. They were all in tune, and they all knew, okay, if we go gang ho, if we go very vertical, if we go very direct, we risk getting into this tennis match, into this basketball match, where Dortmund will have a game state that favors them more than it favors us, right? So that was the second thing. And then Olmo was dropping all the way deeper into our own half, between their midfielders, and creating those overloads we spoke about. Because when Dortmund press, they press with a double pivot as well. But when you put a third midfield there, there's a 3 versus 2 in that area, and Barca used that very well to progress the ball, attack the space. And I think those three things were the keys to our success. And I love that, because that was all three things were adjustments to this game that Flick have made. And that, to me, that shows that Flick is actively trying to find ways
Solutions.
around, solutions around our flow, solutions around the some things that are now working as well, and things that are adjusted for that opponent specifically. And I'm happy for that. That was really, really good. And I'm glad people are mentioning Peña as well in the comments, because Peña, to me, is one of the most improved players so far this season. And Dev, you talked about this a lot at the beginning of the season, and I love that, because you said, okay, Flick is actually persisting with Peña, which should give him the confidence, which should give him the necessary motivation even to become better. And he actually is. It's not that he's a different player entirely. No, his profile is the same, but he has the presence, right? He has the aura, if you will, between the sticks, that he's saying, okay, I'm here and I can do my job, and I will show you guys that I can do it. And he's actually performing.
Yeah, he has risen to the occasion. There's no doubt. There are at least, I don't know, 4 or 5 certain goals across the different matches in the last few games that he has saved. Has become clutch at times. Isn't the best with his feet and what have you. But the biggest thing that I would say is, last season when Pena was in this in the goal, I was like, okay, we are conceding any moment. I don't feel like that anymore, which is the biggest, sign of confidence that he has probably given not just me, many fans like me. So let's cut back into some of the data that we started looking into, and Dom would love, just look points, and also the people who have signed in. So let's look into, just the formation. So this is the baseline formation that Barca, went with. So if you look at it just from a structure perspective, looks like, Barca obviously went with that attack mindedness, position high, 4 of them. Dortmund is a little bit more compact, defensively organized when the game started. The spacing between the lines, both teams wanted to play because they had players like Girassi on one side, we had Olmo on the other side, and so on. Our wingers were quite wide. Generally, they're a bit more narrow, but in this it was. And if you look at the high line, like when they started 47-48, it was pretty much like the game was being played in that middle pitch, right? Everybody was pushing high enough so that, the other one had to press, and nobody was willing to, cede any position on a space or what have you. But quick thoughts on the position before we move to the other ones.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of good points here. You can see the Barca's and Dortmund's actually the basic build-up shape. So it is a 4-2 for us. It was a 4-1 for them, and that's what we normally do. And yes, Lamine is the one who's kind of the widest and most isolated. But that's where you kind of want him in those very fast-paced attacks. You want Lamine to be in open space against one opponent isolated, right? You want that. Rafinha is in his usual position as well. When Lewandowski kind of drops deeper and opens that space, Rafinha kind of darts into it. So that's what happens here. You can actually see it in the graph as well. And Barca are quite compact in the middle. I like that because Olmo is closer to Castro and Pedri, and all three are kind of within close proximity to each other, which allows for those overloads. Number one, but also allows for the combination play, which we have seen especially in the first half. So I'm liking this. This is not a bad pass for
It's
Barca.
slightly different from the other games. If you have seen,
It is.
Dom, it's slightly like if you see just the structure, he slightly adjusted it for whatever reason. Maybe it was for Dortmund, maybe Flick's.
Exactly. It kind of goes into that point that you made in one of the pieces that you made for the blog, where you said, okay, Flick actually actively adjusts not just the whole high line, but the whole structure kind of tweaks and changes depending on the opposition, but depending on the game state as well. And in the games that favors Barcelona, this is a good shape because it emphasizes compactness and connectivity. The only problem is, and that was the whole issue of the game actually, attacking wise at least, look at the left side, the dynamics on the left side are a bit off, right? You don't have once Rafinha cuts in and becomes the second striker type of thing, or just a partner.
And you can feel that we are so right-sided in our attack.
We are,
right? We are so dependent on Lamine and Koundé, and everything happens through that central channel or that right. That left is absolutely like Balde is still not there yet, right? To provide that threat, and that's a weak system in this Barcelona team. But let's keep going on this thread. This is basically like we all talk about XG, but let's look into the opportunities overall. Let's look at the players who really, really made a difference and so on and so forth. Yeah. Even Stevens, I would say XG, everybody went at it more or less the same. But as like you can see the ascendancy of the teams change, right? And the game state changing. There was this time, the period in just beginning of the second half, then Dortmund were pretty much comfortable in their space, and we were being pushed around a little bit. Really loved what Girassi did, and you and I have talked about his potential as a forward or a 9 or what have you. And I know we are in the market for a 9 or what have you. We can talk about that. How good was Schlotterberg? How good was he? He was insane. He was in everything. How good was Macha? Right, and so on. So there were so many players, and then when Pascal Gross came in for the cameo that he did, these were such amazing plays from Dortmund that happened. And then from us, obviously Ferran, because he scored the goals. He was in the right place, like 15 minutes, 2 goals. Who can ask for a better game than that? But also, I wanted to talk to you about Lewandowski. Lewandowski was very much involved, but you didn't see him on the XG chart. But we did see him doing a lot of playmaking, dropping a lot deeper, not like being like this anchorman 9 in the box. Is this something that Flick has asked him to do? Is this something that he did? What do you make of it?
I think it's just what he does in general, especially when it comes to Rafinha and Lamine, because he kind of enables those players. So sometimes when number 9 drops deeper, everyone talks about the Firminos and the Kanes of this world because they drop deep, they ask for the ball. When Lewandowski drops deep, not just Lewandowski, but some other strikers, when they drop deep, it's not always with the intention to receive the pass, right? So Lewandowski can drop deeper without ever wanting to receive the ball. He doesn't need the ball at all times. All he has to do is when he drops deeper is to occupy space, occupy markers, drag markers, or maybe distract markers, and then that opens space in other areas. For example, for Rafinha, for Olmo, or even for Lamine Yamal on the other end. So that's what he did. And that those sorts of actions, they never show in the data, right? Because he was not involved in the action. He was not touching the ball. It won't, the data, the numbers won't really show this as a contribution to the overall play. Whereas it was still very, very important. It was sometimes it's crucial for our attacking patterns because it enables the creation of space, right? So I think Lewandowski, in that sense, was more of a decoy at times than necessarily an active, quote unquote, active contributor to the action, right? So in that sense, he did well. But on the other hand, I think once Ferran comes in and you get more mobility, you get someone who is more active on the front line, someone who moves around a lot more, it kind of changes the whole dynamic. And sometimes that is for the better, right? And when you have players like Rafinha and like Lamine, like Olmo, like Pedri supporting Ferran, we can see what he does, right? All those goals that he scored, they kind of look sloppy at times, right? The first goal was just a bounce, and then
Yeah.
he was in the right place at the right time. But you have to be able to smell those positions, and he does that really, really well. And then the second goal, he had a horrible first touch. He looks up for a second, and he finishes so calmly and so cleanly. And that's what Ferran can actually do. You just have to give him those patterns, give him those combinations, feed them to him. And once he recognizes them, once he knows, okay, this is what's coming, this is what we practice, this is what I can expect from time to time or consistently, and then he can always deliver on those actions. And that's what Ferran, as much as he's frustrating, you can always count on him on being this sloppy finisher, but still finishing those goals, right? He will not be this extraordinary ball striker like Ansu Fati, who's a similar profile. Ansu strikes the ball much cleaner than Ferran does, but Ferran will also always be in those positions at all times. Now, Lewandowski himself, he is a different, he's more instinctive. He can create the separation for himself, but he also has these moments where he's kind of not in the game at all. And that can be due to age, fatigue. I don't, it can be all of that, right? But Ferran will give you that mobility. He'll give you the dynamism. He will give you the presence, even though it sometimes looks very, very sloppy, which, to be fair, it is. It is. At times it really is sloppy. But
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, yeah, and we saw that. Like the goals were not really anything worth talking about, but they did
Mhm.
get the job done. They did provide that mobility that was missing, and um, we were not really making much of a headway in the second half, to be honest,
No,
with
no,
Dortmund.
nothing.
So
Nothing.
until that substitution happened, we didn't really have much of anything happening, and then those goals
No.
just happened out of nowhere. So. Is that something
But
that we can depend on? Maybe
but
not, but generally Ferran has been able to come off the bench and score a few goals for us. So hopefully he carries this form into deep into the La Liga and the Champions League. Let's keep going.
let me just add that
Yeah,
before we go there. See, these goals that we score, they're Champions League goals, and that's a positive and a negative in at the same time. It's a positive because in Champions League you need these against the run of play goals, counter-attacking goals, goals when you're actually pinned down. You're not quote unquote the better team on the pitch, but you score the goals. That's what tends to happen in the Champions League when you come against teams that are equal or superior to you in quality, and you have to be able to score goals from a disadvantageous position. That's the Champions League. In La Liga, for example, we on paper at least have the upper hand in pure quality in most games, right? There's not many teams who go toe to toe with us in terms of player quality, in terms of all that stuff, money, whatever you want to talk about. We are superior to most teams in La Liga. In the Champions League, we need to be able to score these kind of sloppy goals and goals from a very disadvantageous position, right? Those are the goals that we need to be able to score. So that's a positive, but also is a negative because in La Liga or for a long term, that's never really like a sustainable way to play, especially for us who we need to be the protagonists more often than not. Okay, you can
yeah.
now
And
go on.
Shukri, to your point, yeah, we hope that Ferran is a nine, maybe because we don't have the money to buy a nine. So hopefully he is a good nine and he can do the job for us for a little while because we'll need that. All right, let's keep going and look at some other stats into how the game progressed. And we'll talk about possession, accuracy, long balls, and so on and so forth. So you can see the numbers there. So it's not that I'm going to read out everything, but Think about how the game started. Like, okay, possession, Barca was very good in the first half, almost 71%, and then it dropped massively, 29, right? Second half.
Mhm.
But I do fundamentally think that by the time halftime happened, Flick actually decided to let go of possession for defensive solidity. And by the time the game ended, both were going direct at each other with not much of any plan, or so as to say. The also other thing is that if you look into the first half, the use of long balls by Dortmund to evade the press, right? So it's not, this is a tactic that has been picked up by every single team, right? And then we see this with every game, and nothing new. It'll keep on going, I'm guessing. 22% in the first 15 minutes for Dortmund, right? 22% of whatever they did for the long ball. Um, and managing that, adjusting to that is something that Barca will have to, take into mind, because this will happen in every single game that they go, and so on. The one thing that I did not like, however, was the accuracy. If you look into it, like the last 25 minutes or so, Barca's passing accuracy was just not there. Dropped off
Mhm.
massively. Now, is it because of the press or the stress or whatever else? This is something different about this Barca team, though. Like generally, you will, like even like last few years when we weren't doing that well, uh, you
Mhm.
know, the some of the basic fundamentals were always good. Like will, like metronomes, we would pass. Yes, we would pass like crazy sideways amongst each other. There would be no attacking intent, nothing, and it would be boring. But at least those were. With this team, however, there are errors, and we have seen that. Now, is that just a sign of age, or just the fact that we are playing a different kind of a game? Yeah. Overall, Dom, what's your thought? And the people on the show, if there are your thoughts on what you're seeing on the graphs as well.
Um, yeah, a couple of thoughts here. So let's go one by one. The ball possession, pass accuracy, long pass share, all of it was much better in the first half, right? If you let's look at the numbers there. Ball possession for Barca, 71% in the first half. We had the ball, we were the protagonist. 36% in the second half. That is for Barca, that's abysmal, right? We were pinned back, we couldn't get out of the hard half, and part of it was due to the long pass share. Almost, it's double in the second half. It was 10% in the second half, 5% in the first half. As soon as we revert to this long pass style of play,
Our
that
control
plays
goes for a toss.
out control goes. We can't really string passes. We can't really control the game, and it opens an open. It becomes an open affair, and that leans towards the Dortmund favored game state. Right? That's what we keep talking about. Barca need to tailor a game state that suits them more than the position. And the second half was all about playing in the games that suits the opposition more than it suits us. Of course, the accuracy falls down off the cliff as well. Possession falls off the cliff as well. Everything crumbles and it becomes an open game. Luckily for us, we managed to score 3 goals, but they scored only those scored 2. But to me, even though the first half was goalless, that was the superior half for us. And the
Oh yeah,
numbers,
no question.
numbers actually confirm this. I'm not sure about the XG, but you can also see that Dortmund, once they score those goals, they get carried by that momentum, right? They get that extra oomph. And in our preview, we said around minute 75, Dortmund will run out of steam. That's when we have to strike. However, since they scored the goals, they get the extra momentum, they get the extra belief, and that gives them more stamina, more power, more impetus to attack us. And that kind of nullifies this weakness in their overall stamina, whatever you want to call it. So we couldn't capitalize on that. And in that sense, we're both kind of similar. Both Dortmund and Barca are similar because we also do the same thing. We get carried by our momentum. When we score so many goals, we can just keep going, keep going, keep going, and keep dominating. But when we don't score the goals, we kind of fall off the cliff in the second halves, and we run out of steam, which is exactly what happened this game as well, Dev.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are some of the things I think that we will. It's not the last time you're seeing it. I think we'll see it again and again. And the
Mhm.
concern is that there's a lot of league and a lot of Champions League and a lot of Copa del Rey still left. Flick sooner or later has to find ways around this because of our ridiculously thin squad and the challenges we have in player acquisition with our financial state being what it is, right? So this is an
Mhm.
evolving story that we'll keep seeing. Game to game is something that we just have to hope that we come across in a better way. Now the again more data, more numbers, and but there are a couple of things that I wanted to just call so people. And here's what I say when I say Flick does adjust at time. Look at that high line dropping to 30, right? That
Mhm.
didn't happen just by because of it happened because he made it drop, and he went for a low block in the second half for just
But
not
it's
really.
also kind of testament to Borussia. Sorry for interrupting you there. It's also testament to them because they were the ones who actually pinned us down, right?
Yeah, yeah, happy.
They force you into a lower block as well. But yeah, okay, go on.
Absolutely. Yeah. They forced us. We went into, but at least it was not suicidal that, okay, they are forcing us, but we're still going to play our heavy metal. There was some sort of an at least attempt, I would say, to create some sort of defensive solidity. Whether that worked or not, again, debatable. Everything can be better than what it is. But overall, again, if you look into these numbers from that perspective, right? Um, so it obviously dropped significantly, and for Dortmund, it went up significantly, right? So
Mhm,
60th minute, Dortmund are at 61 meters, right? So they're
mhm,
really pushing us hard, right, and so on. And so there's a clear tactical difference in between the two halves, where both teams actually dropped it, and it aligns with the pressing, right? As soon as the formation line changed, the pressing numbers equivalently are very different. They're almost aligned to each other if you look into compare those two graphs, right? And
mhm,
then there was the duels. If you look into the duels, Barca was much better in the first half in managing the duels. But again, second half, like Dom said, the moment we start playing the long balls, right, to evade the press, we lose control. We don't win the duels. It also shows the physical fatigue that the team has,
mhm,
the minutes that they have in the legs, correct?
mhm,
Uh,
mhm,
and then again, if you look into, the attacks per minute, it starts heavy, but by the end it was like 0.05, right? So again, the fact that we run out of energy and the fact that we don't have that many quality subs to come in and keep the momentum, I think that will be a concern for us throughout the season, so as to say. But it depends on how we manage it, and then again with the people who are coming back from injury, how much they help us in doing that. Um, but I do think in the second half, both teams deliberately adjusted their tactics a lot, and that's a bit evident. Um, and I also do think that Dortmund's pressing at that level in the last minutes allowed Ferran to have those free positions. Like
mhm.
he
Yeah,
genuinely got two balls free out of nowhere. If it was a low block La Liga team, it would have been very hard for Ferran to get those opportunities that he got. But
mhm.
over to you, Tom, for your thoughts.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was, in one sense, okay, going long constantly and being this very direct team in the second half. Yes, it was detrimental to our overall control and the ability to play to our strengths. However, it was also kind of situational, right? So Dortmund pressed very high, as you mentioned. They have this incredibly high line as well. So it's kind of natural that you want to try and exploit that through long balls, through balls over the top, and kind of exploit the space that was behind. So it does make sense. From one perspective, it does make sense because obviously you want to play, you want to have the easiest way towards that goal, and that was at that time that was the easiest way to avoid the press and to exploit the space at the same time. But again, our duels win rate kind of dropped, our attacks dropped. We just couldn't really handle it that well. And then it was a game of roulette again. Who can score the more goals quicker, right? And for us, luckily, it was us. Luckily, it was us, and we scored the goals. We had the players on the pitch that could actually capitalize on that. I think Lewandowski in that game state is not as useful because he can't cover the ground. He can't give you the mobility. He can't give you the runs, which Ferran can bring you, right? Ferran can actually follow up with Lamine and Rafinha running straight at the position. He can be there to connect with the pass in the box, even though he starts very deep. Lewandowski cannot do that. He has to either stay up high or not participate in the counter attack at all, right? In the later stages of the game. So I think from that sense, the Ferran sub made all the sense and made the difference at the end as well, which is again a testament to Fleck actually reading the game state well. And maybe, as you said, that maybe he was purposefully creating that game state in some sense, and then kind of getting the best out of the profiles on the pitch at that time.
On mute. Okay, probably one would never know what Flix is thinking. We can only conjecture from here, but looks like something like that could have happened. If we ever get to speak with Flick, we will definitely ask him.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's look at the overall Game Pass map, and there's not much here that like we've already talked about the formation and so on. But I think again, things that Barca fans know, when Pedri is involved, things happen, and you can see here. Um, he was literally the central hub of that possession, receiving, distributing, multiple angles, what have you. The heavy, our focus on the middle zone remains. The Pedri Lewandowski connection again. I think it's been building on for a while. Would love to see what happens with it, like where it evolves to. Rafinha and Yamal again providing the width and attacking, but I think we've got to figure out a way to get Laman. Lamin's obviously playing awesome, but the goals are just not there, and there's no criticism on him, right? But we have to find a way so that he gets into those positions, and and then the goals start coming. Balde, significant like effort, but I don't know how much impact it was, but and so on. But again, the Pedri Casado Kubasi triangle, the Balde Inigo Pedri triangle, the Kunde Yamal Dion triangle. It was a game of triangles if you look into it from that pass map. What are your thoughts, Tom?
Sorry about that, Dev. I just have to adjust my uh, there's an unusual amount of sun in the
Yeah,
UK at the
you
moment,
are
and
lit
it's
up,
all and
bro.
it's all blasting me in the face, and I'm trying to cover it up somehow while you speak. Sorry about that. But yes, I think. Well, let me just. Oh, there we go. There we go. There's a spot. There's a spot here. Yes, the pass map. I think the most encouraging thing is the close connections again. Yeah, as you alluded to, kind of Dev, of players having these combinations in the middle third. That's to me that was the key of the success in the first half. Right, those close connections and being able to combine and outplay Dortmund on our own in our own style, in the way that we are comfortable with. So I think from that perspective, this is the most positive thing in the pass map. Obviously, Lamine is being heavily involved as well, which you always want. You want Lamine. He's not really a Rafinha type outlet. He's more of a player who needs to get involved, who needs to have more touches, who needs to participate in the attack from start to finish. Right, that's what he does. But the lack of goals, yeah, I mean, he's not really a goal scorer just yet. He's more of a elite creator for us, but he can be a more of a goal scorer as well. I think he can kind of develop in that direction as well soon, hopefully soon at least. But at the moment, we do have the firepower, we do have the profiles that kind of complement him well as the creator. Right? If he remains the creator, and we have Lewandowski who's firing, if you have Rafinha who's scoring goals, maybe Olmo as well, and Ferran at this point, maybe then the responsibility won't be solely on him to score goals, right? So at the moment, we can live without him scoring so many goals, but somewhere in the future, along the line, maybe yes, it will be beneficial for him to actually become a more prolific goal scorer as well. And I'll
Hopefully.
pass it on to you. Yeah, I'll pass it on to you while I try and adjust this a bit more.
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah,
fine. You keep adjusting to the sun. We will cut back into the pass map and the combination map. And again, while Dom deals with the sun, we'll talk about the players that actually had. So look at the combinations. Inigo Balde, 28 passes. Kubarsi Kunde, 27. Balde, Inigo, 15, 18, sorry. Kubarsi, Inigo again with the 70, 71 passes, which is their normal average in every single game, what I feel. Casado, 53, Pedri, 46, and so on. So you can look at the axes, the axes, I would say, right? So left side dominance, Balde, Inigo, center backs, Kubarsi, Inigo. Forward pressing from Lewandowski, Rafinha to an extent, but it wasn't that very good. And I think Nilesh, you made that point. A lot of our defensive woes would be solved if we did have somebody as a nine who was consistently pressing, which we don't often have. So yeah, point taken. And then Danny Olmo. Olmo was much more involved in this game, and we have said this in some of our reviews lately that Olmo is great, but he more or less often becomes a moments player. Right, so he just pops up at a moment and then he'll do amazing stuff, but he doesn't consistently create those moments throughout the game. No criticism on him. It's just how he plays. In this game, I think he was a lot more involved throughout. If you look into the contribution from him and so on. And I think again for us right now, the in the pivot, it's still Pedri Casador. I think the better one, Gavi, still needs time to come back and be the person that he can be the player that he can be, and so on. But yeah, the pass maps clearly showing, which players actually make this Barca take, and they're consistent in every single game that we go through. Dom, any thoughts?
Yeah, I've managed to subdue the sun for a little bit, but I still have some on me. But yeah, anyway, yes, I think the Olmo point is a very important one. As you mentioned, in the first half, it was good, right? It was Olmo was more involved. He was someone who was dropping deeper and actually creating those overloads and actually getting the ball in the build-up phase and then progressing it forward and actually playing on those strengths that we often talked about. I think that was a very good way to actually not just use Olmo, but actually, but be in line with what we want to do every single game, not just against Borussia Dortmund. But then once you get the disconnection, once you get into these game states that kind of favor the long passes, the favor the more rapid progression, and so on and so forth, that's when you lose the main strengths of the players like Olmo, like Petty, like Casado, who want to have more of the ball, who want to slow down the game, who want to be want to have as many touches as possible before they actually complete the final pass. But to me, that was kind of the whole highlight, the whole gist of Olmo, and we did highlight that in the preview as well when we said, okay, if we drop Olmo into the midfield as opposed to having him as this moments player, then it can create the overloads because Borussia do press in such a way in a 4-4-2 when they press. There's space to be found there for Olmo, but for all our midfielders as well, who when they peel a bit back, go a bit wide, that's when they can receive the ball and then play make from there. And that's what was happening in the first half, especially. In the second half, not so much, but that was also because Dortmund kind of stepped up the game. They pressed far more aggressively. They won more duels, and they actually pinned us down and forced us into the game state that favored them more than us. So that's also kind of testament to Sahin as well, because he knew what he had to do, and then we were just kind of reacting to what they were doing. Which it's sometimes you can't help that, but at the same time, it was obvious that it did not suit us that well.
Yeah. Absolutely. The question becomes, and we've seen this, the moment we rotate, you can see the impact in these passing combinations and the impact that it has on how Barca actually perform. So that's a big problem for us to solve in the second half of the season. Hopefully Flix finds a way out of this. Now let's look at some of the duels that happened, right? And which ones were the interesting ones. And there were quite a few ones that were a lot of fun, one was Duranville versus Balde. There were 10 of them. Gittins, we expected more, but he was still there, and he went for about 8 with Kubarsi. Girassi, 15, all over the place, right? He dueled with Martinez, Pedri, everywhere. A problem for us. We obviously trapped him a lot of time in the offside, so obviously he couldn't cause as much damage, which is good, but he was there throughout. And then Ben Sebaini and Dom talked about him earlier in the and shot back. Both were so good in the wide areas. Like they were all in, completely, blocking the wide areas, nullifying the passing within the lines, and so on. And then there was Nemcha as well, 16 duels, right? And he was quite good in the way he played. And then finally, I have to talk about the beautiful cameo Pascal Gross had. Like he came in and suddenly the game absolutely opened up. In the way he was connecting with Girassi and so on. So the point of looking at this is to understand the profile of these players, right? Mm-hmm. And the problems that they caused us. Because when you have players of this profile, whether it be in La Liga or in Champions League or wherever, these problems will come up again and again and again. And that's something that we need to be mindful of. And it's very clear. And we struggled in the second half because of this. So Dom, what's your take on, is there a tactical way out of this? Is this a player thing? What do we do?
It's a bit of both, I think. So looking at this graph here, so the red is Barcelona, right? So let's look at Gittins and versus Koundé. There's 8 duels, right? So the yellow is Borussia. Does that mean that there was an equal wins from Gittins and Koundé? I'm not sure how to read this one because it doesn't say who won how many duels, right? It says
it doesn't say. It just says there's total amount that was done, right? So if there are 8 duels, they're calling it out as 8. From the graph, if anybody can make it out, they can make it out. Like if you see 3, like Lamine versus Gittins was 3, it would seem that Lamine won that. right? Just by the size of the ground, but they're not giving the exact number.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
You know, it does seem like Gittins got the best better of Kunde. I think
Mhm.
maybe one more time than and vice versa.
Probably
Um,
something like that. Yeah.
Whereas Balde seems to have better win rate against Duranville a bit, which didn't seem that way
During the
when we
game, it
watched the
didn't
game.
seem like
Yeah.
that, but
Yeah.
seems like on the data, that's what it says.
Yeah, so Balde actually did quite well, or reasonably well. So did Kunde, to be fair to him, because he was marking getters, which is not an easy job.
Yeah.
But we said in our preview, you don't want them in these situations because if they have the 1 versus 1, that already favors the attacker because in one of those situations he's gonna come through, he's gonna breach through, and that's all they need. Sometimes you just need one chance, right? So it's always best to kind of stop that from happening altogether than to deal with it in a 1 versus 1 scenario. So from that perspective, yes, it's something that the system has to somehow compensate for. So they have to make sure that they don't get the ball in those 1 versus 1 areas out wide in open space, because when they do, it will always favor wingers like Gittens, like Vinicius, like Leao, all of those players. Like Lamine, for example. Lamine receives the ball in those situations. You've already done more than half the job because you've put Lamine or whoever that winger is in a situation, a scenario that is far more favored towards him than the defender, right? So from that, that's the thing that the structure, the system, the team needs to work collectively on. But then if you're already in that situation, 1 versus 1, then it's all basically on the player himself, right? How can Kunde deal with get this 1 versus 1? And we see that he did fairly well. He did get beat a couple of times, and I think many of those chances that the Borussia had, the clear cut chances, the ones that had high XG came from those
Yeah.
takedowns from Gittins as well. So that's the problem there, right? If you can't stop that 1 versus 1 from happening, then you're actually giving the opposition the best possible platform or foundation to build upon their attacks, right? The same with Duranville as well. If he beats Balde more often than not, obviously they're going to have bigger, better chances to actually win. So it's quite good to see that. And also another positive is Gurasi against Kubarsi. For example, Kubarsi beat him more times than not. Look at that. Kubarsi was actually quite good against Gurasi as well. And then where's Inigo? Inigo was right next to him. Inigo was slightly less successful, but also those two controlled Gurasi really well in the first half. In the second half, it wasn't as good, but the first half was mostly spotless, I think, which is a good
Absolutely. They were
sign.
spot on. The first half was very clean. But how good is it to have a nine who can do that many duels, right? 15 from Girassi, right? If you have a nine who can press like that and who can do these duels, it's such a luxury for a team,
Mhm.
and hopefully, we work that out in time for us in terms of the nine that we have or we get or what have you. But
Yeah,
really liked what he brought to the table that day. In terms of the game and so on, and Dortmund will feel, obviously Dortmund fans will feel a little hard done that they didn't win, because they did play a good game overall. So as
yeah.
to say, all
Yeah,
right,
Lewandowski had 10 duels, but he actually lost most of them, right? If
yeah.
you look at the lines, the yellow line is much longer, suggesting that okay, he lost most of those duels. And now I'm all dark. Of course I am. Never mind. I'll figure it out for next time, guys. Sorry about that. Dome versus the Sun. I think the Sun wins this round, but I think for next time I'll try and adjust this. I
Oh
did
yeah,
not
I mean,
expect.
I think that was Dortmund,
Yeah.
and that was good. It was a great game for for our goals. It was very good. We won. If somebody had told me earlier in the season that we would be second in the Champions League in the league phase, I would have laughed and just fallen off and not believed a
Mhm.
word. So thank you to Hansi Flick, that he has been able to give this to us fans after such a long time. Right, because we as fans have suffered so much all these years, especially in the Champions League. So it's good to see that the team is where it is. Hopefully, we'll get the one more win and qualify. Flick wants to be number one, is what he's saying in the group. So let's see if that happens. But even without that, it's been a great Champions League campaign till now. Doesn't mean that it's given what will happen in this round of 16 or that we'll win or whatever. But positive signs, and we should give Flick the credit that he deserves for this,
Mhm.
because with this team, with the investment that was made, with the number of kids that he is playing with, I think it's a stellar achievement of what he has done. from that perspective. So with that, we will switch our attention from Dortmund to the Liga, because that where we are a little bit struggling and we have lost our lead, and we are coming up against upbeat Leganes and Atleti, which won't be easy wins. And if we don't get these two under the belt, it can be a nervy second half of the season.
Yes, absolutely. And for me, it's all about seeing who will actually start this game, because Rafinha was knackered, Lamin's playing too much. The midfield also, we do have some question marks as well. Lewandowski has been subbed for Ferran, and Ferran has actually been good. So can we expect some rotations in the front line, especially? And if we do see those rotations, who is going to get the nod and who's going to come back to the bench? Because multiple players need rest. That much is obvious, right? But do we have the depth to actually rotate all of them at some points? We'll see. But to me, that's the biggest question, right? How can we rotate without losing on too much quality? Because we've seen when you rotate too heavily, like the Osasuna game, for example, everything falls apart because you don't have the quality in that depth. So it's usually either you rotate and lose the quality, or you don't rotate and retain the quality, but then you're playing fatigued players consistently. So to me, that's the biggest thing going to this game: who is going to start, who is going to get rotated, and what will we see from Flick from that perspective. But yes, a game that we should be winning. We have to win to keep up with the rest of the league, because Real Madrid are on top of us. Atletico Madrid have managed to kind of claw their way back, even though it seemed impossible for them at the start of the season. So it's kind of a tricky situation, because it's a must-win game, but then at the same time we are visibly fatigued and struggling, so it's not going to be easy, especially with Atletico right after that game, and then it'll be another break for a couple of weeks, which will be a welcome one probably.
Well, Dom, you have a question from one of the people, Nilesh. So yeah, take it away.
Yeah, Balde. It's always the same talk about Balde, but what's most concerning about me is not the attacking side of things, because he's been asked to do something that he cannot do on his own, right? He has to handle the whole flank by himself, because there's no one to link up with. And Rafinha is the more central player. Our midfielders are also central as well, so he doesn't have the support in attack that he should have, because he's expected to kind of attack the space, be the final third presence, but also track back religiously and go all the way and be this rest defense transition defender that we know he can be. But then to me, the more concerning part is the defensive side of things, because he seems to be much more reactive these days. He's not timing his challenges that well. He's not really reading the game as well. He's relying on his physical superiority with most forwards to kind of come out on top, which will not always be the case. We saw against Duran, for example, he was against a player who could actually match him in that intensity, who could match him for technical quality, and then he was beat numerous times, right? And to me, that's more of a concern. He needs to polish his defensive game a bit more, because yes, in theory, if we sign a Leao type or some sort of winger who can be a dominant presence on the left flank, it will ease the responsibility from Balde, because he won't be tasked with doing both things equally well. He will be tasked to do the progression and defending, which is what his profile is attuned to. It's more optimized for that side of thing of play, right? But at the moment, he's not shining in the things that he's meant to be shining. For that, to me, that is the bigger concern, and just his lack of final third output, because that was never a part of his profile, right? It wasn't. But if he cannot do the attacking, but also struggles in defending, then we have a problem. To me, that is the bigger concern at this moment, Dev and Nilesh.
Yeah, I mean, Balde, the jury is out. A lot of people have similar thoughts on him, and and so on. So, but the point is, I think what do we do? I think we have to bet on him. I think he has potential. I
Yeah.
think he's too young to give up for now. And I think with coaching and guidance, probably he can build himself up over time. He does have some really good characteristics. Now, at his age, in 2 years, how much he should have improved, how much has he improved? Yeah, it's debatable, questionable, and all of that stuff. But I wouldn't be the right person to comment on it. But if not Balde, then whom? That's the first question. Do we have somebody? I don't think we do. One. Two, even if we went to the market to pick up somebody, who would be available, even if we had the money, right? That's the second question. So, and we don't have the money. So that's that. And then they're trying to really build a core using Barca Academy players, obviously, and that's that. It's more than just it's tactics, PR strategy, whatever you want to call it, and he fits in from that perspective. So hopefully, coaching takes care of his growth, and he becomes better, because obviously there are gaps to his game, and there are certain things that he does very well. But that's
Yeah.
it, guys. Like, we've been going at it for about 50 minutes. We will look forward, obviously, to the Leganes game, and hopefully we. This is not a banana skin, and we win this one, because the 31 is going to be tough, really, really tough. So hopefully we get the job done on this one. And once the break finishes, and it will be a welcome break, because the players need some rest, and we get the 1 point that we need, and we qualify. If we win these two games, the Liga games, I think it's a very satisfactory first half of the season, punching way above expectations. Is how I
Yeah.
would, like, I would have never have thought that we would
Yeah.
be in this position. So I'll take it with both arms, with all the mistakes that we have made, or things that are not right or wrong or what have you. But I think they've overachieved to what we thought it would be. So kudos to Flick and the team. But if we do lose these two games, or one of them, it can be very, very challenging, as we, come back after the break, for the business end of the season.
Mhm.
Any final thoughts, Dom, before we sign off?
Not much. I'll just a few. I think yes. Now it's very easy to say, okay, we've lost so many points, we've dropped our lead. But as you said, there no one really expected us to be in this position, at all. So I think from that perspective, yes, we have done really well. And you have to remember that this first half of the season, it's been mostly away games for us, and it's mostly been high intensity away games too. So I think that plays a big role, right? It's not easy being on the road so much, not easy to play against all these teams. And we beat Dortmund away, the team that's been undefeated in the Champions League at home for like 3 years or something like that. So it's not easy to do what we're doing, and to stay competitive against teams like Real Madrid, who are not. Yes, now we know they have issues, but they have so much star power that at the beginning of the season, no one would have really predicted us to be neck to neck with them. So I think when you consider all of those factors, we've done really well, and we should be happy with the performance. Well, it's dropped off a little bit, but we should still be happy with the results, and where we are currently. And that will be my kind of final take, Dev, before we log off.
Yeah. So thank you, guys, all of you who have joined. This was impromptu, and sorry, we generally do it after the game, but we couldn't this time around. So just
Yeah.
making up. We'll be back live after the Leganes game, to talk about Leganes and what happens there. So hopefully we win that one, and we'll see you then. But till then, enjoy the weekend. Have stay safe, and Visca Barca.